What's up, besties? I hope you're having a remarkable day. This is very personal, so if you do any of these things and feel like it's working for you, well, I still encourage you to think about it some more, just in case you will change your mind. Ultimately, we all have different goals and take different paths to get there, and this isn't universal. I'm just talking about myself, and I hope this can help somebody. These are just a few examples of what I hope I did differently or what I still want to unlearn. I guess the reason why I find this a good topic is that with a lot of this stuff, I didn't necessarily think that much while doing it for some time, and so I just kept repeating it, even though it wasn't good for me. And once I become conscious of something, I can work to try to correct it. This video was supposed to be a top 10 initially, but then I just had more things to put on the list, and I decided it's more worth it to put them here than to have a pretty even number, so sorry. Number one, not caring about my drawing hands. I know taking breaks when you're in the flow sucks. You don't want to do this. You just get. I just get completely sucked into the process. I could sit for hours, just doing my thing. But if your hand starts hurting, it's harder to draw anyways, and sometimes people even get permanent injuries from that. I luckily never actually injured myself, but I've been in situations when my hand was shaking or I couldn't write as fast in school next day because I'm in pain, or I just struggled more with the brush or pencil control in general. This happened most often when I was drawing with crayons and didn't use any markers or other tools for filling in bigger areas, and I was pressing the crayons to paper really hard to get that smooth finish. Did it look good? Sure, especially for my skills back then, but I didn't need to go through all that pain just to get that. So take breaks, do some wrist exercises. Don't overwork. Just don't overwork yourself. If you feel pain, don't just push through it, and don't hold your tools too tight if it's not necessary, because you can just hurt yourself, and you're just making things harder for yourself. And when it comes to the crayons, as I've said, this was the one technique that I actually don't do that much anymore. Not that this isn't the reason why I stopped. I guess moved on to things that are more fun for me. But one thing that helps me now when I do use crayons from time to time is when it comes to these initial layers, using markers or watercolor to like have some basic shapes done with that. So then I only do the shading and the details with the crayons, and so the color is smooth and I don't have to press as hard because I'm blending by not applying that much pressure, and I don't have to like press hard to get the crayon into the two holes in paper because it's already covered in either the markering or the watercolor. Obviously, with watercolor you have to also bear in mind that paper doesn't necessarily take everything all that well, but you can probably find some compromises. But that's one thing you can do. Number two, not drawing the other eye. I mean this both literally and as a metaphor. You can replace the eye with hiding characters' hands, or always putting them in loose clothes so the anatomy is hidden, or avoiding drawing backgrounds. We all did that at some point. You've got one nice eye and then just put hair or an eye patch on the other one just because you don't want to do it, because what if you do it wrong? What if it isn't symmetrical? What if it doesn't match? What if you have this one eye and the other one is shit, and you're going to ruin a whole drawing because of it? And here, obviously, covering one eye in general is obviously not a mistake. You can do it if that's your artistic choice, but a lot of time it's just avoiding. I'm not talking about doing this on purpose because you want to. I'm talking about actually avoiding drawing things. And here, if the face is en face, so we see directly straight from the front. If you're doing it digitally, you can just copy one eye and paste it, though I would advise you to do it in two pieces so that you mirror the outer part of the eye with the eyelid and the eyelashes and everything else, and then don't mirror the iris and the little specks of light because, well, in real life they're not symmetric. They're usually just pretty much the same. Plus, this way it's easier to avoid making a character cross-eyed. If you don't want them to be cross-eyed, because you can just place the other iris where it's needed for you. If you're doing it traditionally, you can literally just help yourself with the ruler at the beginning if you don't feel confident to just map out where it goes. This obviously only works if your character doesn't have a facial expression that would make their face not symmetrical. But still, I'm going to guess most of the people who do the funny eye behind her thing just to not have to make the other eye don't draw these expressions much yet. If the face is angled in some other way, it obviously can be harder, but I really think it's worth to practice and only do things like covering it as a choice and not because you can't do it, because it's just useful to have that skill, and like, I get it, you're scared it will look like shit and ruin the whole piece, and here I can't exactly tell you it won't. You know how to make it not ruin your piece though? Get good at it! And the only way to do it is to draw a few shitty eyes and or whatever else you're avoiding despite wanting to do it well. Number 3, leaning too close to your piece and not caring on what angle it is. This is sometimes unavoidable when you're focusing on details. First of all, it kind of warps your perception of perspective, especially when you're sketching. If you have a tablet with a screen or you're doing it on paper or just traditionally, it's worth to try to have it on an angle. Like, there are special tables or little stances to put on your desk to put your thing on, so it's not lying directly flat on the table, because sometimes if you draw like this and then pick it up and look at it directly, it will be either like squished or elongated in some ways because you were looking at it on this huge angle and didn't see that something isn't right this whole time. For me, even sketching on my laps was better than that, because then at least I was looking straight down on it, although it's bad for your spine, and also then there are problems with light because you're casting shadows on your piece while drawing, or you're too far from your lamp, or whatever. Drawing on your laps is a bad habit too. Also, when it comes to being close to your piece, especially if it's on paper or on canvas, because digitally you're zooming in and out anyway, and also you get to use different transform tools if something is wrong, and you can control Z things, and you can control Z things, so just delete layers but have layers that are on top or below fully preserved, so you have more freedom in this aspect. But when you're doing it on paper or on canvas, you can focus on a small piece of it, not noticing that there is something wrong in general, or that your lines are warped, or like the composition isn't right. And you might waste a lot of time on that one small piece, but then the overall thing sucks. Also, when it comes to drawing digitally, it's damaging to your eyes, and you kind of need these to paint or draw, so take care of them. If you're working on some small details, once again, you can zoom in. You don't have to be that close to it. Other things that might help is not drawing on a white background that will burn your eyes out, especially that if you pick a background that fits your piece from the beginning, then it will give you more context for how the other colors should look like, because the same thing will look differently depending on the lighting and colors surrounding it. And if your program has a dark mode, then you should probably use that. Clip Studio Paint has it on default. In some programs you can change it, or perhaps search for a plug that does it. So that's a choice. So if that's a choice for you, then you should probably just do it. Number 4, not flipping my canvas. This one I still struggle with, and it's obviously one that is related to digital art. Just do it if you remember. Sometimes when you look too long on a piece, you don't notice wacky proportions of things, and when you just flip it, you look at it like it's a new drawing, and you start noticing more things. One thing that helped me with that was that I stopped mirroring my references that I look at my phone when I'm drawing. So if a reference I use is mirrored compared to what I want on my actual piece, I just flip the canvas and use it as it is, because now it's right. I think an alternative for flipping your canvas for traditional art is taking a break, not looking at the piece for a few minutes. Best case, just leaving the spot where you're working. You can make yourself some coffee or tea, go to the toilet, maybe even scroll through social media for a bit if you're not going to end up procrastinating because of that. And then when you come back, you'll be able to look at it with a fresh eye, or at least for me, it works like this. For you, I think it's worth trying, but we're all different, so I cross my fingers it helps, but I can't promise you this. It's just really helpful for me, so I thought I would share it. Number 5, having unrealistic expectations for my art. This one is more about creating mental barriers. If you're trying to improve, you obviously have to push yourself to be better and better, but obviously you're not going to be perfect immediately. If you're too harsh with yourself, it's going to suck all the joy out of it. This is one of the things that leads people to giving up. It's obviously a lot easier said than done, but you just have to be kind to yourself. All this self-hatred won't lead you far. And with times you will get closer and closer to these expectations. It just requires patience. Number 6, not acknowledging that we're all different and our paths to what we want to do are different. This is why I keep on saying that there isn't universal art advice. One example I can give is how a lot of people say, oh, you always have to start from learning realism, and why I partially agree, because having some basic understanding of perspective, anatomy, and how shading works is super useful. Stylizing art in itself is a skill that I'm not that good at now, specifically when it comes to more exaggerated cartoony stuff. So I think that if someone's goal is to make stylized art like this, they should also try learning how to stylize things along with, just learning the general art rules. So I wouldn't say you should ignore what people who have more experience are saying. If you have a goal in mind, go find advice on achieving that particular goal. Like if you want to draw manga, for example, go find a manga artist who gives out advice and whose art you like, and look at what they're saying. A lot of it is going to overlap with what your typical art teachers at school who are more into like all the styles are saying. Sure, You need to have some understanding of anatomy and perspective and stuff, but perhaps you'll find more precise directions for what you need. Or maybe you have a very particular problem that you notice, like, same face syndrome or struggling with picking a color palette. Just search for information on that in particular. Even if you hear some art rule a lot, if you feel like breaking it will help you achieve what you need. For example, lots of art teachers will tell you not to use black, or not to blend pencil, with a blender or a tissue, and definitely not your finger. If you feel like it helps you and you know what you're doing, I guess it's worth trying, although I'll get to the blending part in a moment. Number 7, staying in my comfort zone all the time. Everyone's comfort zone is different, obviously. Some time ago I saw a set of paint, I think, and commented that it's weird that it doesn't have any yellow. And while I stand by my point and think that if someone is selling a set of paint, it should have all primary colors, the creator of the video I was commenting on, who isn't the creator of the paint, just another artist, said that sometimes it's worth to try using a limited color palette like that, and challenged me to do a piece with no yellow. So I looked at my art and realized that aside from like sketches, things done fully in ink, or in some other way monochromatic, I really haven't made a piece with no yellow whatsoever in months, if not a year. I don't even remember. So I accepted the challenge and made this very quick, very loose, and unserious piece. And the thing is, I wasn't using the yellow in every single piece consciously. I mean, I know it's one of my favorite colors for making art, but it just happens. And the thing is, when we notice that we have these patterns, it's worth trying to break them every now and then. Our improvement relies on using new techniques and choosing different subjects and trying to accomplish different moods, different ways of shading. Maybe if you know how to draw a 1, 2, and 3-point perspective, you might want to try a 5-point perspective. I did that not so long ago and it was fun. And there's nothing wrong in using stuff your favorite ways or just choosing your safe topics. But every now and then it's just worth mixing things up and pushing yourself. You have to do it if you want to improve. I guess it's hard doing it because you don't know how to and you don't want to be bad at it, but that's literally the one way you stop being bad at it again. And I'm not even saying that, you have to push yourself to do something new in every piece you're making, because, if you have your favorite ways of doing things, your comfort ways, if it's fun for you, sure. But, it's just worth it to sometimes get out of that comfort zone and try something new. Number 8, not using references despite needing them. There's this YouTuber, I'm not going to name drop because I still love them, who was one of my big inspirations for getting into art in the first place. Because they're like an OG. I guess it's a if you know type of situation, but they have one terrible take that I've learned from them and try to live off of, which is that using reference pictures, especially if you didn't take them yourself, is not okay, and only relying on your brain creates better art. And sure, I think being able to make art from your memory is cool, but sometimes you just need to look at something to know how it looks. Come on! I literally have aphantasia. I'm not even able to picture a circle in my head and barely any colors, most of the time black and red, let alone the whole person. It's not cheating, it's not devaluing your creativity and your work. It's just a part of the process. Even the biggest, most beloved artists in history used references. whether it was someone posing for them, or and some objects then that you were making from nature, or just some other form of it. Now, obviously, if you just want to repaint or redraw a piece and not transform it into something completely different, you should credit the original creator, and you probably can't use it for like monetary gain because of copyright issues. But not using any references at all is an unnecessarily obstacle that I don't think we should put in our way. It's just not worth it. In my case, I usually use many references for one piece, making a sort of collage out of them. And the thing is, if you draw something with a reference, a lot of times you will probably to some degree gain an ability to draw it without it. I, for example, can draw a portrait from my muscle memory quite okay. At least the angles that I've drawn the most, simply because I remember all the steps and shapes that are necessary for a portrait. But I still use photos to have nicer shading and be sure I know what I'm doing, and to just focus on the parts of my process that I actually care about, because the basic shapes, it's not that interesting to me. Number 9, ignoring perspective. I think the reason I had this so badly is because I avoided drawing anything obviously geometrical for quite a bit. But it really makes a huge difference to know what you're doing when it comes to this stuff. The same subject will look different based on the perspective of the viewer. It may also look wonky if you're using multiple references for the piece, because then sometimes some objects are in one perspective and then some in another, and it just doesn't work. So I want to either find references in which the perspective is consistent, which I usually do with different body parts, because sometimes I can literally just replicate the angle of the photo and use my own hand, for example, for a reference. Or when it comes to other objects, it's much harder to find matching references, so I alter them as I draw. And the reference is mostly for knowing how the thing looks, but all the angles and geometries related stuff I have to understand myself. And there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube. I'm going to give you a sub to some if I find it, because it's a lot of explaining and I don't think we have place for it in this video, but yeah, basic 1 and 2 points perspective you should probably understand. Number 10, drawing what I think my subject looks like instead of what I'm actually seeing. I've mentioned this before on my channel. I named this phenomenon pictograms because I think this word illustrates what I mean pretty well. It's relying on formulas to draw different things. I don't know to what degree this is a universal experience, or whether my aphantasia might have influenced it and made it worse. But what I mean by pictograms is just learn the ways of drawing something when it comes to its shapes or shading or whatever. It's just most obvious when kids do it, with a sun in the corner of the page, blue clouds on a white sheet of paper, houses that are made of a square and a triangle, and so on. I don't know, a Christmas tree that's made out of triangles, or these types of things. Just trying to go off some scripted way of drawing something instead of actually looking at it. I'm sure kids know that sun isn't always in some corner, or that houses are a bit more complicated. That's just how they simplify it to themselves. And we are able to understand these drawings, just like we are able to understand that these things on bathroom doors represent men and women, and that emojis represent different facial expressions usually, even though humans don't exactly look like this. My brain just tries to simplify things, and instead of looking at actual shapes, I just remembered some shapes and tried going over that, even while looking at a reference. Mm. One exercise I've seen people doing, I've tried it a few times a few years ago, and it was fun. That might help with that is turning your reference upside down and using that as a study, just drawing in this way. Because when I do that, my brain doesn't really have place to try to reinterpret that into some simplified version of it. So I just focus on the shapes, the actual shapes that are there. And I guess this is difficult when talking about like stylized art, because often people will draw, for example, eyes in the exact same way in all of their pieces. And if that's on purpose, I don't want to criticize it. But if you want to have a skill on how to draw at different angles and with different expressions, you need to look at what shapes you're playing with. And then stylize it. And it took me way too long to be to any degree capable of doing that. As I've said, I'm still not good at more cartoony art, but you have to look at things. Number 11. Not even sketching things that are covered. This is mostly about backgrounds and bodies when they're covered by like long loose clothes. When it comes to bodies, sketching them will help you to maintain correct anatomy. Just do it. You don't have to like have every muscle sketched out, but it's worth to at least have the shape done. When it comes to background, once again, it's very tempting to just not do what won't be visible at all. But for the sake of consistency, I still recommend it, especially if you're doing it digitally, because then you don't have to worry about like having to draw in between your characters' hairs or like some meticulous stuff like that, because it's just a different layer. And if it's not digitally, and you can later on decide to move something, and now we have a hole in the background. But even when it comes to the IRL stuff, it's worth to sketch it out just because it helps with things being aligned well. So you can later on either erase it, cover it up, or whatever. I think it's just worth doing. It helped me a lot, at least. Number 12, using short little unconfident lines to make bigger lines. This one I'm still a little guilty of, especially in digital art, just not to the degree I was in the past. Firstly, it's just worth training your hands, trust me. Secondly, once you've learned it, it will likely look better unless you want messy lines, and that's your artistic choice. I think that can also look cool. But having a skill to make your lines nice and clean is very cool too. I'm not innocent here, especially when I'm not consciously thinking about it. But some time ago, I saw my non-artist friend draw, and I was dying internally. Seeing how long it took them to draw an extremely ugly. I didn't even remember what. I just remember it was so frustrating to look at them making these tiny, tiny, tiny little lines, tiny, tiny little eyes to try to cover that they don't have the confidence in their hand to draw. I don't know, a fucking circle. It's like, just you can do a fucked up circle. Just please hurry up. But like, I feel like my damn little inconfident lines are getting longer and nicer with time. Ever since I tried not do that anymore. And even when I'm not thinking about it. And I know that it might look like shit at the beginning, because instead of being messy, it can get wobbly and wonky, but it does get better with time. My lines now are less wobbly than they used to be. This is just a result of training your hands. And also trying your best to draw out of your whole arm, not just your wrist. Like if you have the space to move your whole arm, you should. Because it helps you to just get those more controlled, confident lines. Also, if you want to use any tool where pressure dictates the weight of the lines you're drawing, like a brush pen or a digital pen that reacts to this factor, and you want the pressure sensitivity to actually do its job and create this nice line art with varying weight, but in a good way, to the lines, you just need the skill. So it's just worth having. Number 13, overblending. See, I'm back at the blending. This piece you're seeing is really not the best example to be using in this video because I don't blend here at all. And blending isn't actually bad, you just need to have a reason to do it. One of the reasons art teachers often tell us not to blend in an exercise, aside from how doing it unskillfully might just make the whole piece dirty, is that it's helpful to practice mapping out exactly where the shadows and the different colors go. Now, while in real life obviously does have gradients, not blending can be an artistic choice like the one I'm making here, but also there still are some hard edges to things, unless it's another stylistic choice. We don't just usually want everything to look blurry. This is only bad when you're not realizing you're doing it and don't mean to do it. Yeah, just another thing you can practice, like look at where things are actually blended, where they are not blended, or maybe you want to blend something that usually isn't blended, or you want to try to use simple shapes like I use here without blending them at all. And number 14, working too small. This is specifically about traditional art, since in digital art you can just zoom in and out and add as many details as you want, or even while doing something like change your canvas's size. As a beginner, I used to mainly draw on A5 paper. Even if I had an A4 sheet, I'd simply just fold it in half to make it smaller because I was afraid that, of the commitment that making a bigger piece meant. The issue with that is that the smaller the pages, the less room you have for details, for training your hand to make nice long lines, and the thicker your lines will be in regards to the size of the artwork. I later moved on to an A4 sketchbook that I initially thought would be for bigger, cooler pieces, and I just didn't look back because that's such an amazing size, like big enough to actually draw something but still fits in a bag. Absolutely perfect for a sketchbook. And then later I started doing some B2 pieces because that's the size required in most art unis here. When it comes to like the practical exams and portfolios. Now I didn't get in, unfortunately, but let me tell you, if B2 sheets were more comfortable to carry around and didn't require as much space to set up when you want to draw on them, I would do this so much more often. It just gives you so much freedom. And you don't have to actually make a masterpiece on every sheet too, because again, I was scared of the commitment of making a bigger piece. You don't have to actually make everything look good. You can fit a few exercises on my page also. Maybe just cut something out if it doesn't cover the whole page if you like it, and you can stick it into a regular side sketchbook. Or hang it somewhere. Or I've got a nice car drawing, for example, I did that only took a fraction of my B2 page, and I just cut it out. And also you can turn your little B2 sheets into like a nice exercise spread where you, for example, on one sheet do exercises on 1 point perspective, on 2 point perspective, like right next to it. Maybe one with 3 points perspective, also one like on this page, so that they're on one page and it looks nice and you can like keep it and it looks cool because you wouldn't be able to fit like three different drawings on A4 or definitely not A5 sheet. Like if you want to them to actually look nice and you want to actually like try things out. Um, but yeah, I think I definitely recommend trying that out. Uh, yeah, I think that's all from me for now. I hope at least something that I've said was in any way useful to you. If you have any more things you think could be on this list, or maybe you have any comments on the art I'm drawing in the background, I just made up this art style for like quicker, less realistic projects regarding my OCs because I've been daydreaming this story for years now, and I have so many characters and events they took part in my head, and I just want to see them. This is Lena in her very casual outfit. It will change in the future. This is like her at the beginning of the story, like before all the big events take place. But yeah, I need a much faster art style that I can redraw my characters in, so it will probably develop more in the future. And maybe you have some advice on how to make that better. I would love it if you left a comment in the comment section down below. And for now, just stay safe, stay hydrated, and peace.